Hi there, everybody. It's Dave Inglis here, host of the Chief Family Officer podcast, and I'm so excited to introduce you to Ellen Boeder today. I have learned so much from Ellen over the years. She is a psychotherapist, she is the co-founder of the Relationship School, and a teacher that I work directly with to be able to refine and really advance my own coaching skills and how I support families and couples. I asked Ellen to join me in this conversation to really explore this theme of shared leadership at home. And throughout this conversation, like if you're somebody who wants to get better and better at actually leveraging the differences between you and your spouse, if you work together or even if you're just building your life together, this is a conversation you're going to want to make sure you cozy up, listen right into, and take lots of notes. She explores how do you actually leverage differences, such as the pace at which you make decisions, how sensitive nervous systems are, among many other things. And at the end, we also go into, if you're actually going into business with your spouse, a very unique and important perspective that she and her husband, Jason, have on how to do that in a really meaningful way, where building your business does not come at the cost of your family. I hope you enjoy this conversation just as much as I did. Well, delighted to be able to have this conversation as I had sent that note to you on Instagram shortly after you posted that great photo. I think it was actually of you and the kids and Jason maybe on a beach somewhere, but it was a picture right around the inauguration day, Martin Luther King's birthday, and you had a wonderful articulation about shared leadership, how important it is, how some might say absent it is right now. And in general, a really big conversation around what good leadership is, I think, is taking place in a lot of our homes and a lot of our communities. And it just made me want to reach out because I've learned so much from you, Ellen, over the last number of years. It was great to study with you and Jason to really learn about supporting and challenging the system of a family or couples and some of the most challenging moments of their life and the core issues that we all face. So thanks for having a conversation today around shared leadership.
Yeah. Oh, it's my pleasure. It's one of my favorite things to think about and try to figure out. Yeah.
So when you think about shared leadership, like in your mind, how do you describe what shared leadership is to other people, or maybe what it is not?
It's a great question. It's, where I'm coming from when I answer that is, I'm coming from the vantage point of being a psychotherapist and a coach working with people on the relationships really in their homes with their partners and their kids. So I'm not coming from like a business shared leadership or political shared leadership place, but really this very intimate kind of where it all starts in my mind.
Mm.
How do we, the smallest segment of society is a couple, where two people come together and then they build a family and then communities and then bigger and bigger, right? So I really think it starts here in our homes, in our partnerships. And to me, for everything I'm learning and studying around this, keeps leading me back to this idea of, shared leadership is it's a more difficult to do than just one person leading, because you have
Mm-hmm.
to work together. You have to consider another person's interests, values, way of being, pace, feelings, and that takes more time. It takes more attentiveness. It requires a little more creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And, ultimately in a home, I think we feel like we're sharing leadership when whatever we're doing feels like it works for me. It also works and is good for my partner and good for our relationship, good for our family, good for our health. Like we're really trying to cover a lot of ground and a lot of needs and a lot of values when we are collaborating in a considerate, productive
Mm-hmm.
way with our partner. And so that requires transparency, honesty, it requires knowing yourself.
Right.
I mean, a lot goes into it, right? So a lot goes into this. It's not just easy to do. And again, I think if we look around the world, it is easier for us to just put one person at the top and just kind of live with the consequences of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
think it's better to have to be more inclusive, maybe have more diversity in that, in what whoever or whatever ideas are at the top. And in a family with couples, it's like, gosh, when people are different, that can be great because then you have two minds thinking about things in different ways. You're covering so much more possibility and ground, and you have more capacity because of that. Most people struggle with differences and look at our world. It happens
Oh
in our
yeah.
homes too. Like, if you're different than me, I see that as threatening and I want to change you and I want you to be more like me because that just some part of me thinks that would be better, instead of learning how to work with our differences and respect them and value them and work towards this larger end goal that probably a lot of us have in terms of having a good life and what that means.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a long answer to really a complex thing that we can do, we're capable of doing as humans, but it does require all of our faculties to really be that considerate and ultimately creative with each other.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you
Yeah.
were describing that, I was just writing in my notebook here the word
Yeah.
complexity.
Totally.
There's a
Yes.
lot of complexity in that. And I remember being somebody who's done a lot of coaching with individual leaders, typically in a context of where they are a single individual team leader or manager. One of the big things that really resonated with me and was a total paradigm shift in the way I was approaching supporting not only couples, but even business partners was recognizing that you're really interacting with a system here.
Yeah.
It's not an individual, like it's a
Yeah.
system that has multiple parts, and the complexity that comes with that is so inherent and so um, integrated into the very fabric of what we're talking about. And I think it's the nuance that makes it really challenging. And I've often joked, if you want to get better at leading, your company or your team, or we spend a lot of time right now talking about and criticizing people who are leading countries or learning different organizations. I often say, well, how are you doing at home? Like, how's your
Yeah.
leadership doing at home? Because that's going to be one of your best arenas to continue to develop the ability to do everything you just said, to be considerate, to bring in different perspectives, which I think you and I both are cut from the same cloth, that would make really good decisions that are
Yeah.
beyond our own interests, right? But a much bigger collective. The word pace was interesting when you had
Mhm.
shared that.
Mhm.
Being at different paces.
Yeah.
This is something that I was just witnessing last week with a wonderful young couple that I work with. In some situations with families, there's a real urgency to make decisions.
Yeah.
We have children who are struggling with health conditions, and we need to make some decisions rather urgently.
Mhm.
But each partner can have different paces of which they process these types of decisions, let alone expertise or understanding that allows them to be able to contribute meaningfully. And I could even see in that instance one who's like so clear, so ready to be able to make a decision, and somebody else who is still finding their voice
Yeah.
as an individual and needs some time. And the pace of which they move is such an interesting variable to being able to build a shared leadership model that works really well for them. And it comes to mind as you mentioned pace, like both of those individuals, and I even feel this in my own home, we say we want to be able to have a shared leadership model.
Mhm.
But when the pressure is there, I've even caught myself sometimes like being performative of my intention of having a shared leadership model and really just wanting to try and influence my partner to agree with what I want to go and do and move forward. And I can really see that really quite clearly in environments where there's an urgency and there's a difference in pace between the way that
Yeah.
partners work together.
Yeah.
What's your experience been like supporting couples to find the right pace and to come to a pace that works well for them in different decisions like that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. Yeah, even the word urgency, I want to question like people might too. I often have couples where one thinks something's super urgent and the other's like, this isn't
Mm.
urgent. This isn't even urgent. Like she has a fever or she's not, and it's like, let's take her temperature. We don't have to run to the ER. Um,
Mm.
and I think that, so that's interesting. And that's a lot. Pacing is a lot about our nervous systems, our processing speeds. That's stuff we can't really change about ourselves or each other. We can get a little faster, we can slow down a little bit, but those settings are pretty deep
Mm.
in our nervous systems. And so, they're based on our families and really just how you have multiple kids, so your kids are wired differently, like from the
Oh,
beginning,
yeah.
right? You see that, you're like, oh my God, two different people growing up in the same family. But um, I think that, again, this is where if you have that shared leadership idea, if you have that
Mhm.
principle that like really whatever we do, we need to be in step. We need to move at a pace that we can both integrate, manage, and feel kind of safe and secure within. And so someone might have to kind of move a little faster than they're comfortable at times. Someone might have to slow down, but ultimately it's like you're trying to, you know, if you think of it just like hiking together, like you two people almost never walk naturally at the same pace, but you over time you find a pace that like is works so that you can have your
Mhm.
conversation and move together. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I think that this is where, self-awareness really helps, and knowing yourselves, knowing your partner, and being able together to like with you and your wife, I'm thinking of just like, does she know that you might tend to want to move faster and let's get things done, and is she good at saying, hey Dave, like I want to get all that done too. I think that it's important that we do this. Yes. And there's a few more things I want to think about with you before we do that. Or, there's ways we can handle each other that could help us feel like kind of cue each other that remember this has to work for both of us.
Mm.
Or you being able to say to your partner, like, yeah, I know there's like a lot more research we could do. Actually, we could probably research this for months, on the internet and never be done. But I think we have enough information and I trust us. And what would really be essential for you to know so that we can, make a decision today? What's the main thing you're concerned about? You try to just address this is again, it's complexity, nuance. You said nuance, which is huge. We're
Mhm.
often missing that. We're trying to just um, couples often are just trying to get things done. There's so many decisions to be made in having a life, especially if you're both working, you're raising kids, you're running a household. There's a million decisions every day. You're trying to just keep going. And uh but if you are but there's a drawback to not to yeah, pace. If you're going too fast, you're not considering each other, you're not thinking about those your partner, those some of those decisions can start to feel unfair. They can start to feel um not collaborative, and that creates another problem.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's just really
It
normal for
sounds
people to work at different paces, and then it's like, well, how do we even work with that?
Yeah, it even sounds like even just having this conversation more at a meta level to
Yeah.
talk about our different paces
Yes.
and the way that we maybe agree to challenging the assumptions about core elements, like how urgent is this thing, as an important piece that builds perhaps a shared context for how
Yeah.
we're moving into things, is a really important skill that couples can build together and to actually deliberately practice conversations that help them proactively understand how we deal with these types of things.
Yeah.
I can tell, like, even in myself, like when there is pressure, and whether it's real pressure or perceived pressure,
Right.
there is this drive sometimes that starts to make me forget about bringing my partner along and wanting to bring them along. I can sense in what you're sharing, like being able to talk about how do we agree to slow each other down when we feel like that's the case, and how do we agree to speed things up when
Yeah.
there is a moment of urgency. Is that something that you encourage couples to like figure out before they need to, or how do couples build the ability to do that? Because it feels like to me knowing how to navigate that critical moment, and when I say critical I mean like it's something that happens on repeat, where our ability to handle that moment well is going to have a big impact on our relational dynamic in those types of situations. I don't mean critical in the sense like huge and existential, but critical
Right.
in its repeating nature. Like, do you encourage couples to explicitly figure that out, or how do you build that skill in a shared
Yeah.
partnership model?
Yeah. Usually people aren't proactive about these things, right? Like they come to us like in the thick of it feeling bad, like this, and they don't really know, they're just mad at each other. They're just like they feel judged or they feel frustrated with how their partner's different. I think
Mhm.
so. I think what typically comes in is people being in a pattern that feels frustrating and impacting their connection negatively, right? It's not like a maybe a relationship deal breaker, like you're saying, but just like this really rubs us the wrong way and impacts how close we feel and how, warm and good we feel with each other. And so, you know, um, I can use Jason and I as an example here, my husband, because he's like a fast paced, wants to get a lot done quickly. Always, Saturday morning, he's like, here's our list. And I'm like, oh my God, like it's the weekend, dude. Like, can't we just go for a walk and get coffee? And, I'm more like, I want more space on a weekend, or I make decisions slower. I'm more thorough, but he gets a lot done, right? Um, there's so what I'm speaking to is how it's important that couples value each other's differences. I'm coming back to that like I really do value how much he can accomplish and how kind of quickly he can get things done around the house. He's not thorough, maybe. Um he left to his own devices, he'd work a lot and not have much space and a lot would get done. But we would miss out maybe on rest and creative, spacious time that I really, really need. And
Mm.
sometimes our decisions do need to, like it's been so great when we've gone slow with some things, taken a few more days with something, or let me just check with this one person about that thing because I think they know something I don't know. Like sometimes it's been great to have me slow things down. And he sees the
Mhm.
value of we both know that there's value in each other's ways. And so that alone, Dave, really helps us um work together well. Like that, I just think that's such an important part. So a lot of times couples, something I'm
Mm.
doing is helping them try to see, like, do you see the value in the way your partner does things, or what are the assets to that way, and what are the drawbacks to your way, right? Because we all think our way is the best way. And under stress, like
It
you're
is,
saying,
isn't it?
yeah, I'm sorry to say, it's, unfortunately, it's not.
Mhm.
Um, but like you were saying, when there's urgency, and I would say,
Mhm.
yeah, we could say when there's stress, we do get more self-oriented and we want to do things the way we're most comfortable doing them. And that makes us less considerate of our partner, less collaborative. Uh, and and so it really working together is how you're gonna kind of counteract those tendencies under stress to get kind of self-oriented and just do things the way you're comfortable, which for Jason would be to move faster and get a lot done. For me under stress, I
Mhm.
want to slow down and like think more, I so but together we actually come up with things that are, good for both of us. I can see the value of banging a lot of stuff out on a Saturday morning, and then we have a lot of space in the afternoon. Or he's like, yeah, let's set this list aside. Or that's just one example, but we can, it really, I think, starts with seeing the value of your partner's way and being willing to, not seeing them as like an impediment or like, I think that's just what happens is people start seeing each other's differences as problems instead of
Mm-hmm.
this is actually an asset to the system. Like you were saying, it's an asset in our system to have diversity. And we have to be really communicative and cooperative to get anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It sure does. And I'm thinking just very practically, there
Mhm.
are some families that have, I would say, the resources or the willingness to want to sit down with somebody like you to say, help us,
Yeah.
help us. This is not as good as we feel like it could be.
Right.
We'd love to be able to better understand each other's assets and find a more cooperative, shared way of navigating through these types of things. For somebody who maybe doesn't have a partner who has the willingness to want to come into that conversation or even the means to be able to, what are some of the ways that you can kind of start to create those types of conversations and to become more of a student of your relationship in your own home? Like I think about you and Jason, like do you guys, after you go through a particular season or decision moment, kind of go back in time and do a bit of a debrief and say like, what did I miss here, or what part of our system did we could we have leaned on more? Is there an element of like evaluating your experience that you do independently, or what works well if you don't have maybe a third party to be able to help with that?
Yeah. I think it starts with being comfortable talking about your relationship. It's actually I'm not sure what you see out there, Dave, when you're working with couples, but I'm honestly surprised at how many people rarely discuss their relationship. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how is our relationship feeling to you? How do you feel honored and valued and respected and considered here, or whatever you're looking for, really? Do you know what you both want out of the relationship, what it does for you? Like, people really don't honestly think about that very much or discuss it.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
And so I think that's where you know, because of the work Jason and I do, since for like decades now, we're always talking about our relationship, other people's relationships, our relationships with our kids. We're just interested in relationships. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think for us, it's just, I wouldn't say there's something we always do or don't do, but we will, like, this week he did something. Um, I think he posted something. He did something that he hadn't, about like work we're up to, that he hadn't ran by me. Like, and I felt like he decided something without my input. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, like, what was that? What happened there? What happened there? Because that actually, to me, didn't feel collaborative. And it's really important that in this thing we're up to together, I want to feel collaborative. He was like, oh, right. Cause he's moving fast. He
Mm-hmm.
likes to make decisions on his own. He was just like, right. I occasionally, that happens where I don't feel considered, let's say. And so yeah, we sort of regroup. He's like, oh, right. Like, should I, sorry, I see that. I see that it wasn't in alignment with what we've agreed to or what you're expecting. And that makes sense, so we repair things.
Mm-hmm.
Repairs another piece, because we all are going to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes I do things that he also is like, yeah, maybe it's something with the kids where he's like, oh, wait, you changed that. I thought we were doing this way and now we're not. And I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't really tell you. I just was moving quickly and trying to get things done. I said, we're not doing this anymore, whatever. And so we do have to kind of there is that. That's normal, I think. But because we can talk about our relationship and what we like and what we don't like and how we want to be handled, and um, we can give each other feedback. We both are open to growth and development. I always want to know when I've done something that doesn't land well for him.
Mm-hmm.
I always want to know that because that's never intentional. I'm not wanting to forget about him ever, but I do. And so I want,
Mm-hmm.
like, we have that agreement, like, yeah, let me know as soon as possible if I do or don't do something that doesn't land well or has a negative impact, because I want to fix it and I want us to recover and I want you feeling good with me. So I think I think there's just a lot of conversations couples could be having about their relationship that aren't just like me complaining about the things that bother me about Jason. That's sometimes that's the most people do. Is like, well, I don't like this about you, or they complain, but that's really different than how do we want this to be? How do we want to handle our differences? What would
Mm-hmm.
feel good to you? What would it, is this something you want to work on or not with me? Do you think that'd be a good thing for you to do more of or do less of? Because I know it would help me. I think it would help our relationship. Do you think it'd be good for you? Like, there's just a lot of conversations that aren't being had.
Yeah, I share that observation, and
Yeah.
it leads me to the next question, I guess, which is how, I think of 3 or 4 women in my mind who I've come to know over the years who have been married for 15 to 20 years, like not in early relationships that have gone through a number of different seasons. I heard it put
Yeah.
in a rather funny way the other day. You're going to be with 4 or 5 different people in your life. The question is it going to be the same person?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I had a good chuckle at that. I thought, well, that's really astute, right? I feel like even in myself, I've already been through 4 or 5 different lives, right?
Yeah,
Like different
totally.
versions of Dave. And
Totally.
even in my time with Jennifer now over 10 years, like I can see that there's definitely been two, for sure, distinct kind of chapters.
Yeah.
But I think about, these 3 or 4 women that come to mind who have been in a relationship where they've actually evolved quite a bit. And the story that I've often heard is, when I first got into my relationship with my partner, they were such a source of confidence for me.
Mm.
Starting my career, and I was so dependent on their belief in me, and they were so formative in helping me become the person that I am. And then all of a sudden we started to have our family, and it wasn't just our careers and being together, and I started to focus on being a mom a little bit more, and they were really focused on career. And now our kids are older, they're now teenagers, and I'm kind of in this spot now where I don't need him for that self-confidence that I originally did. I'm actually very confident on my own. I'm quite successful. And in some of these homes, I'm actually, objectively look at things like being a primary breadwinner or the largest contributor financially to a family. Like I'm at a spot now where I'm contributing more over the last 20 or 30 years based on this trajectory that I've been on. And there's a lot of acknowledgement of like the role their partner has played, but the kind of current dynamic is one of, gosh, I've changed 2 or 3 times and I've noticed that they've kind of been the same person. And I want more.
Yeah.
This relationship feels like there's so much distance. But anytime I try and talk to them about it, it's just like, wow, 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 wow. And to your point of talking about this relationship, where are we? Not, and I love how you really delineated between, am I going to talk about the shit that fucking bothers me about you? Or are we going to talk about us? Like there's a
Yes.
much more mature conversation there. I wanted to illustrate the kind of arc of that because I've seen that pattern several times.
Yeah.
And what I can hear and feel in those conversations is this real appetite to say, like, meet me where I am now, and I want to build this next journey with you, this next chapter of the journey with you. But I'm sitting across from a partner who doesn't want to, a partner who is scared to, a partner who is unsure how to. There are lots of very legitimate reasons, but the point of the matter is that partner is not at the table. And I'm curious, in your experience, like, is that a deal breaker moment, or are there ways that individuals can start enrolling their partner in the possibility that we don't just get married and like let this thing kind of hang on? Because you and I both know longevity of a relationship is certainly not a marker of its success,
Right.
right?
Right.
How would you encourage in the story that I gave, the women in that particular situation, but let's not kid ourselves, it can happen in the opposite situation as well for men, where their partner doesn't necessarily feel ready.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a great topic. Because I think when it comes to relationship over time, this is a real reality that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you have one person that's growing and developing in a lot of different ways, and the other person that either it's not as obvious, we're all changing and growing in some way, but it might not be as obvious or as external, or as they might not even just be as aware. They're not
Mm-hmm.
really reflecting on
Mm-hmm.
how, like, parenthood or marriage over time or life over time is informing them and changing them. Like, some people just don't really self-reflect very much. And so when you have a couple where at some point in the trajectory of the relationship, 10, 15, 20 years in, 25, where someone's like, I want more. I want our relationship to evolve because I've evolved and I want something different. That could be a great turning point, or it could be the end, is what happens. Because people, when someone changes and wants a different kind of relationship, that doesn't mean their partner wants that too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think people understandably get scared. They don't want to lose their relationship. They want it to
Right.
evolve and change. They want, like, I want to be with you, but I want this to, like, be growing and developing and deepening over time. And their partner doesn't either know what that means, or, like you said, is scared, or for whatever reason is not, that's not what they want, or they don't understand what that even means. And so the growth partner, let's say, in that situation can, I think first I would say, has to appreciate that they're trying to change the terms. Like,
Mm.
there's a challenge there. Like, I think the growth person, I'm just calling them that
Yeah.
for ease, doesn't, they're so convinced that their idea and their way is just better and where they should be going, and they're like, they just want to kind of argue their point, or and I'm like, I just always want people to have a little empathy there for, you're changing the terms of things. You're starting now, your partner um, that isn't on the growth path the way you are is starting to feel judged and criticized and wrong for how they are. They're starting to hear that you don't value the relationship. Like, they're having to weather a lot of
Mm-hmm.
negative things in this narrative that you think is really positive, but they're hearing all the ways that, like, they're failing you and this relationship's failing you. So I think there's if the growth person can own, look, I'm growing and changing, and I know that's unforeseen, or that, this, I have ideas now that we didn't have in the beginning, and that you might not even know what the hell I'm talking about. And maybe that's scary for you, or you're, this, just appreciating that this is a change. And then the question is, how could I invite my partner into what I'm wanting? How can I
Mm.
show them and start handling them in the way I want to be handled, or, like, asking the questions I want to be asked, or being responded to, how can I show them how, when I'm, like, how developing more curiosity about us could be good. Like, sometimes the growth person is just sort of like, I want you to think the way I think about this. And they're trying to, instead of just doing it, instead of just, this is the kind of partner I want to be now. This is the kind of relationship I want to be in. What do you think? Could this be good for you? Could you enjoy this? Could this have value in your life? I feel like sometimes that can go better, because they're introducing a new paradigm that their partner might just really be kind of clueless about. They didn't grow up in a family where anyone did that. They don't have friendships where people are doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's just not the conversation they're in inside themselves. But they could find value in it. But sometimes the way it's brought to them, they just feel really judged and like, oh my God, you're just kind of trashing everything we have that person really valued or really worked, instead of, there's a nuance again to how you open that door. And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that that would always work, but I think the growth person, the last thing I'll say is that I really want them to be true to themselves. I don't want them to, I don't want anyone abandoning themselves to stay in a relationship. I don't think that is great for our health and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people compromising what they really want, what would really be good for their life trajectory, just to kind of hold on to that relationship that they are starting to feel like they've outgrown. That's not going to be great for
Mm-hmm.
them. Um, and it's also not good for a partner to be like, sure, I'll change for you. I'll do whatever you want so that I don't lose this. So there is this nuance of how do we be true to ourselves and who we really are and accept who we are, and what are we open to, what am I genuinely open to exploring or experimenting with or moving into, that's new, potentially, that could be good. Could it be good for me? um
Mm-hmm.
the non-growth person has to maybe be open to, wow, maybe this, what could I get out of it, and to really spend time on that with their partner. And the growth partner has to, I think, be willing to be true to their desire to grow and have a relationship where that's really an ongoing element. I wouldn't want them to miss out on that. So
Yeah, well said. Well
yeah.
said. I love this idea of acknowledging that you're fundamentally changing the terms of that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, it really makes it quite clear how big of a thing we're actually asking of our partner,
Yes.
right?
Big.
And also how delicate and um, patient we ought to be in the process of figuring that out together in a way, like you said, where we're not just trying to manipulate or quickly just get it done and get you just to be on my side, or in doing so, fracturing a relationship that otherwise at the right pace could actually have evolved thoughtfully through it. And I've
Mhm.
often thought a lot about the difference between waiting versus allowing for things to change.
Mm.
And what I'm really taking away from what you're sharing, just in this idea of show your partner how you want to change, to give them an experience of what this next evolution might be like, instead of waiting for them to be ready or coming to you saying, yeah, I want all these things too.
Yeah.
That waiting game, especially for a growth oriented individual, of which I would self identify as, like, it's painful.
Yes.
It feels like you have nothing that you can control. And it's so easy to fall into the rut of resentment and judgment, which only continues to, I think, sever or kind of deepen the wedge that is originally the kind of feeling that maybe brings this desire to the surface. But what you're really talking about of, make the choice yourself and actually live into and embody the curiosity that you'd like to experience more of. Show your partner what that's like. That to me is an example of what allowing the change to actually come forward without waiting for like the agreement or
Yeah.
the clarity or the readiness to be there. I really love that as your way of encouraging the growth oriented person to kind of almost take like an empowered surrender stance on that, where like you're empowered to show them what you want, but you're also surrendering to your partner's process of being able to experience what you want and being able to actually come to their own understanding in their time. I think that empowered surrender is a way that, when I think about what you're talking about, captures this tension between, let me show you, and also I'm here patiently waiting,
Yeah.
to rewrite those terms.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said.
So how does this translate into working together in a business context? You and Jason have in the past, and I think even still to this day, are in very much an entrepreneurial home. You love building things. Do those terms that underpin your kind of shared leadership approach at home translate into work? There's a lot, and I would say a growing amount of couples in my world who are choosing to build their vocation and their business careers together. And like you said, everybody's got different gifts, finding a way to bring it together. And some are learning it's exactly what they should be doing, and others are questioning their sanity as they're starting down that pathway. What are you
Totally.
learning as it relates to this shared leadership model when you're working together? Does it still apply?
Oh God, 100%. Even more so. It's like, it's, because now we share obviously our relationship, we share our kids equally, and we're both very engaged parents, and then we share business too. And so we are there's no break from having to consider this other person all the time. And so for us, that's mostly fun. At times it's like, God, are we going to be able to make this decision together? It's sometimes it's hard. We have to really plod through something. But I think when it comes to couples working together, it's important to remember that you're always a couple first. That if you go into, and maybe you know something about this, but if you go into like handling your partner like a business partner, or like anything other than your spouse, lover, best friend, most important person, it's not going to go well. Partners, even if you're sitting there talking about a business idea or a business project or a big problem you're trying to sort out in your business, partners want to be handled like a partner, like a life partner, and so that means to me that their feelings matter, that they feel cared for, and that that their partners. I want to feel like my partner's curious about me, cares about me, is interested in my feelings first. Because if you start to just problem solve or just argue about, well, it should be done this way or that way, like you can't. It's just partners who are working together just react way more strongly to that kind of thing. So I think that's a thing that we have to keep in mind when we're working with our spouse, is like, our relationship comes first. How you feel with me matters. Like sometimes Jason and I are trying to do a business thing, and we get into an argument, and I'm like, we have to stop and like repair and recover, and we might not get this thing done today because we just got into a argument that felt bad, and now I don't want to work with you today. So I have to repair this with you first, and then we need a little time, and we'll come back to this maybe tomorrow or this afternoon. But it's like, God, the relationship really does come first. So you have to be good at that part, I think, to be able to work together well.
That's a really interesting way to consider that choice, because I think that the easy, and some might say the more intellectually interesting, maybe not with you, but those who maybe come from that entrepreneurial background, I was like, well, is the idea a good one? Can we actually go and do it? What's the opportunity? Like, we start to evaluate the potential and the decision based on the merit of the business.
Yeah.
Rather than based on the prerequisites of our relationship and whether or not we've established the way of being together in a shared leadership model that's ready to go into that environment.
Yeah, you've got to be willing to, because like that can be a really fun conversation for couples at times, right? That are working together. And then there's times where it's like, if you shoot something down and you're my partner, I might be like, oh, that kind of hurt my feelings. And now I want to talk about that. Like, I don't like how you just said that to me, or I felt like like that's different. It's different than if you're just business partners. That might come up occasionally, but not nearly as much if you're married, let's say. And so
Yeah.
I think there's this agility, like can we move back to when we need to? It doesn't have to be constant, but when we need to, when something goes awry, can I quickly reorient to, I'm sorry, I'm sure my tone wasn't great. I was moving really fast. Let me come back to what was important to you, and let me understand that idea better. Like we just have to be willing to um kind of quickly move back to like, right, you're my spouse, and that matters
Right.
first. And then we can get back to our idea generating, or like really picking this apart. We have to feel safe and secure as a
Hmm.
couple in order to do business together. So that's what I see, is there's like people just learning how to be agile with that. Like, oh yeah, right now we're back to our relationship. Is everything good again? It might take 1 minute, might take an hour. Um, and then we're back to work or something like that.
But that constantly being a foundational
Yeah.
element that
Yeah.
has to be there. I love that. Never
Gotta,
forget that partners want to be treated like partners, even in the context, or especially
yeah.
in the context of business. This has been so fun hanging out with you today. I feel like you and I could talk about this for hours.
Yeah.
You and Jason do some remarkable work in the world, with individuals as it relates to their relational dynamics and their families, and a ton of work with entrepreneurial couples who are trying to solve for this exact like intersection of their business ambition and their family life. Um,
Yeah.
where, if we wanted to continue following along with your work, could listeners or those who have enjoyed our conversation continue just to follow along and learn from you and from Jason? What's the best
Yeah.
way?
Uh, through the relationship school, our
Yeah.
website, and the relationshipschool.com, and yeah, just our individual names, websites, jasongaddis.com, ellenbader.com. That's where our current offerings would be. Yeah.
Cool. Very good. Well,
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
so much, Alan. This is
So
great.
so fun, Dave. Yeah, it's such a pleasure, and I know you're doing such good work yourself. And just again, your thinking, your curiosity, your willingness to kind of wrestle with the complexities and nuances of good relationships. I really love seeing that in you. It's enjoyable to talk to you, and we just all want to bring more of that into the world, into people's lives. So it's fun to be on this journey with you.
Fun. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Ellen. We will find some of the topics, no doubt, to explore together
Great.
in the future, but this was a great one. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome.